Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Evangelist Matthew Miles Sr., welcoming you to another online Bible class presented by the Central Point Church of Christ in Bloomington, Illinois. Listen, the title of this class is entitled Determined to Rise, based upon a book written by Tony Carter, one of my cousins and one of my dear friends, a very gifted and talented gift to the Lord's church. So we're going to get right into it. This is lesson number 8. So whenever you're watching this, we trust and pray that you have prepared yourself with pen and paper to take some notes and to share this class with someone that it can truly bless them. Brothers and sisters, we left off last class talking about the second step in determining who you are. Remember, there's 5 steps to determining who you are. Number 1 was to define you. To define you. And today we're going to continue step number 2 we started in our last class, and that is to determine you. To determine you. We left off sharing with you that in determining you, daily self-evaluation is vitally important. I reminded you how the Apostle Paul teaches this very principle in 2 Corinthians 13 and verse number 5. And the King James says it this way: examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves, know ye not your own selves, how that Jesus Christ is in you, except ye be reprobate. So we know that Paul teaches a principle here, and of course he's telling them, the church there in Corinth, to examine themselves to see if they're in the faith, but the principle there is self-examination, whether it's on a spiritual scale, whether it's in corporate America, whether it's domestically in your home, whatever it might be. There's a principle of self-evaluation. I told you that determining has a dual meaning. In Tony's books, he states that to determine is to evaluate and to conclude. To evaluate and to conclude. Now, beloved, ongoing evaluation skills are very critical to being successful in life. Let me say that again. Ongoing evaluating skills are very critical to being successful in life. But here's the challenge today, brothers and sisters. Here's the challenge. The conclusion that we may draw from constantly looking in life's mirror can be a very difficult conclusion to face. This is where many people struggle to be honest. And they struggle to be honest, first of all, with themselves. They are afraid that they may have chosen the wrong road of life. Another fear may be that it's not the most direct route that they could have taken. But here's the question. Beloved, have you ever known anyone who stayed in a dead-end situation for too long? Come on, be honest with me now. Be honest with yourself. You ever known anybody that stayed in a dead-end situation too long? Perhaps on a job, relationship, in a bar, in a lounge, drugs, alcohol, an investment, or a partnership. You see, the problem with those people was that either they never looked intellectually at the road that they had chosen and were driven by emotions, or they simply chose the wrong mirror to look into. Life has mirrors. And sensational saints, we must stay away from what Tony describes in his book as the carnival mirrors of life. Y'all remember the mirrors at the carnival? They can make you appear to be tall or short. They can make you appear to be skinny or fat. Can even turn your Coca-Cola bottle figure into an hourglass figure. Y'all know how that is. it can make your head look huge and your body small. But saturated saints, we must look into the honest mirror of life that will give us an honest and true reflection of who we are. Now, of course, someone is sitting out there watching this class may ask, well, Brother Miles, where do I start? What is this true mirror of life? Well, it starts with your definition of you. That's what the first step is. You have determined who you are. You've determined who you love through this study. We've determined you must determine who your source is, and your source and what your source has intended for you to be by the situations that you experience and the gifts and the talents he gave to you. Now, beloved, you should know by now who this true source of life is, who this true mirror of life is. Beloved, God is the mirror to determine if you are using those gifts, talents, and situations on the proper path or road that will lead to you being fulfilled. Yes, God is that mirror, beloved. Why? Because we're made in the very image of God. And if you're going to see your image, you're going to have to look to God, because God is the one who has intended for you to be whatever you're going to be. He is the one who has given purpose to your life because he's your creator. Sensational saints, this is a perfect mirror that gives a perfect reflection, because God is perfect in everything. I said he's perfect in everything. Question: what road of determination are you on today? What road? Whatever you need, God has got it. If you're looking for a fulfilling relationship, God is the source for perfect love. If you're looking for a fulfilling career, God is the source for perfect wealth and achievement. If you're looking to be a singer, God has the perfect pitch. After all, you know, it was God who designed and created the first vocal instrument, don't you? That's why I tell people all the time when they want to argue about, some folk call it bass miking. Some folk call it bebop. You trying to sound like an instrument. How can you sound like something that was created to sound like you? The human voice was first. Every wind instrument, it sounds like man. Every string instrument makes a sound that is made by the vibrations going across the chords of man, of the man. So God designed and created the first vocal instrument. And not only that, he created the most effective automation system to produce a mass production called birth, childbirth. Beloved, this perfect mirror, God, will help you conclude whether the path you have determined will lead to contentment and peace and ultimately back to you. You know why there's unrest and so much unrest and lack of peace in cities like Chicago and other major cities? There's no contentment. There's no peace, because God is not present in that home. He's not present in the life of that child, these young people. There is an addiction to the carnival mirror. Yeah. There's an addiction to the carnival mirror. The definition of addiction, beloved, physically and mentally dependent on a particular substance and unable to stop taking it without incurring, underline this, adverse effects. You see, the reason why so many people is addicted to the carnival mirror, because they know inside their very heart that the life they have chosen, that the true mirror would reflect, would cause adverse effects, showing them that their life is not in line with the true or with their true definition or their true purpose. And so that's why people choose to stay in denial, because they know that if they're confronted with truth or with their creator, their wayward life would prove that they're out of touch and out of sync with God. Brothers and sisters, yes, it is true that there is a level of comfort in familiarity, but don't you dare fall for the okie doke. I know sometimes it is so much easier, and Tony mentions this in his book, to stick with the familiar, no matter how painful or unfulfilling it is. Simply because it is the familiar, it doesn't require any real change for us or any real effort. So it's easy to fall in that rut with the familiar. But life gives us indicators and signs that we ignore. I know I did. Oh yeah, there were some signs. There was some direct instruction from my mother that I ignored from others. For example, you worked that job for many years. It was a struggle for many mornings to get up and go to that job, to get out of that bed. This information and this knowledge, this struggle was trying to draw you to the true mirror for the definition of your life. But you continue to ignore it. And to go to that job you despise anyway. An honest look and observation may help you to see that job or that career was not the definition of who you are. Notice some relationships. Some relationships can cause you to wander in the wilderness far too long than you should have. Now, what do you mean, Miles? All of us going to make mistakes, and all of us going to make some bad choices. But sometimes we tie ourselves to certain relationships that's toxic, that's not beneficial for us, and we end up in that wilderness anyway. Beloved, it is a fact that sometimes change is very difficult. Did you hear what I said? That's a fact of life. I've experienced that. Anyone who has been a leader have experienced that. Many times you bring ideas and visions to the table that God gives you. And many times the people that you're working with, the first thing they say, and don't even realize that, well, what we normally do, well, what we usually do. And you're trying to move them forward. But they find themselves resisting. Why? Because change from some people is very difficult. And just because you get used to something does not mean it's the best way. Many people need help to change. Sometimes there's a need for an advisor or a counselor to help you to change. I recommend that you consult with someone who can help you. And I recommend that sometimes you may need that help on a regular basis. This person should not be just one of your friends, somebody who simply just like you or love you. This person should be a professional or someone who is not simply a friend but has an idea of who you are. It should not be someone who has no idea of your definition or the definition of you. This person must know your definition of you and is truly interested, underline that, and I don't use that loosely, who is truly interested in helping you reach your goals, because everybody around you is not truly interested in helping you reach your goal. You need to know that. Smiling faces sometimes tell lies. Hello, somebody. My mama say they'll smile at you now and stab you in your belly. They used to say stab you in your back. But now they're bold enough to look you in your face and lie to you. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we must beware of what I call the love-hurt factor. The love-hurt factor. You see, many times our family and friends will typically advise you to remain in that old familiar state, whether it's your work, a relationship, a situation. They would tell you to remain in that familiar place or on that familiar road of life because change is hard for them also. And sometimes because change is hard for them, they don't want to see you change, even if it's for your better. Tony says something very powerful that's actually mirrors my choice, or shall I say, my natural gravitation when I was growing up to certain people. Tony says, and I quote, "Your advisor has to be someone who has already reached many of their goals in the area you are seeking advice. No one can show you where to go on a road they have never traveled." End of quote. I agree with that. Beloved, that's so very true. But I personally gravitated to my mentors and advisors who had already reached most of their goals because there is no ego issue. I don't know about you, but I've run into a lot of people got, ego trip, they don't want you to come up because that'll damage their ego. So I gravitated to people who were much older than me. Most of the time, they were 8 to 10 years older than I was. They already been where I'm trying to go. They've already accomplished what I'm trying to get to. They're sure of themselves. They've established themselves. So there's no jealousy issue. There's no ego issue because they've already done it. They already got the T-shirt and already got the hat. And they know the way. One of the gentlemen, I shared this with my brother-in-law one time, and it really blew his mind that I felt this way about him, but it's the truth. You all know him. Many of you know him, Evangelist John T. Thomas, one of the elders and associate ministers of the Sheldon Heights Church of Christ. He married to my sister Doris, took her from my dad's home many, many years ago. But he impressed me so because he was always about business. Oh, he likes to clown and have a good time. But when it comes to life, he's serious about the Lord's church. And anybody who's worked with him and served with him know that he is dead serious about commitment and consistency for the Lord's church. But he was very serious about his home and very serious about taking care of my sister and my 2 beautiful nieces. And he just impressed me because he had several things as a young man. Moved from an apartment, bought his first home, bought nice cars. And I was just puzzled and baffled as a young man. How are you doing? How are you buying all this stuff? How did you do that? I was young teenager. And it was him. He was the first man from outside my dad to influence my life on my road, on my journey to manhood and to who I was by definition. And he sat down, and he wasn't selfish. He took time. He didn't rush. He didn't feel frustrated or like I was taking up his time. He took his time, and he sat down and he showed me a system of how to accomplish things and to make your very first budget for your home and for yourself. And that's what you need. You need someone who genuinely loves you, who believes in you. And he was giving me accolades one day, and I said, "Well, you know who my first admirer was outside my dad?" He said, "No. I said, "Man, it was you." And he thought that was very sentimental, but he knows he's not our brother-in-law. He's our brother. And that's what he is. He is truly our brother. But it takes someone who loves you, someone who cares about you, and want to see you be the best person you can be. Beloved, it comes a time where there's some people you just got to cut out of your life because they have no good intention for you. Saturated saints, as I get ready to get to a close here in just a moment, Tony gives an account of his journey of evaluating and concluding what road he wanted to take after high school. This is interesting. You need to listen to this. And this is going to bless somebody. And I pray that you're sharing this class with someone, because there's a lot of principles here that Tony shared that can bless the life of your children, yourself, and others. But he was on this life, this evaluating himself after high school. He didn't want to go to college right away, although he was an A and B student. He had a passion for singing. He wanted to go to Hollywood, like any performer or actor does. He spent all his time writing songs and recording demo tapes. You know, back in the day when they used to sell the tapes out, even out of their cars, you know how they did it. He regularly performed at talent shows all across the city. One of his most vivid memories was performing at the Crown Royal Talent Showcase, held at the Chicago Regal Theater. Y'all remember the Regal Theater? Which was equivalent to Showtime at the Apollo in New York. Tony was in a contest there where he tied with one of the well-known singers and who has gone through some struggles, but R. Kelly and the MGMs was there. And Tony was up against them, and he ultimately lost in a 1-minute challenge performance. It came down to the wire with Tony and another one of his colleagues, young lady, against R. Kelly and his group. But now, after that glimpse in life's mirror, Tony had some decisions to make. Even though he lost, he could have drawn several conclusions. He could have learned to gyrate his pelvic and dance like R. Kelly and his group. He could have built up his biceps and pecs, and so he could tear off his shirt like R. Kelly did. But Tony thought about how embarrassing that kind of performance would be to his own very dear mother. All right. Now that was influenced. Just like Timothy was influenced by Lois and his grandmother Eunice, and Tony was influenced by his godly mother. So he wasn't going to be gyrating and dancing all over the place, improperly. But Tony had a choice to make. Tony could have given up on a professional singing career, but Tony chose to become a better singer because he already knew who he was by definition. Beloved, you see, self-evaluation and self-reflection is about choices and conclusions. Tony decided not to give up. He decided not to try to be something he wasn't or someone he wasn't. He worked on his pitch. He made the right choices. He worked on control and tone. He started studying other great singers, and he went on further to work on his voice. Now notice, Tony could have made some other decisions, such as learning a few sensible dance moves, but he concluded that he wasn't a dancer. In other words, he knew his limitations. He had already defined who he was. And I want to challenge you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever you're watching this class. I want to challenge you that one of the first things my father taught us was to know your limitations. I remember one day I was preaching, and I was starting to develop and become a pretty good preacher. And that's not by my definition. That's by remarks that was made by others, as well as my father. But Daddy noticed how I was using some words, and I used them properly and intellectually. But he wanted to know if I could defend them, if I could explain them. So one day in his office after I preached, we had a wonderful service, and we were sitting around watching TV, and Daddy asked me about a word that I had used. I knew the word. I knew what it meant. But he wanted to hear me intellectually explain it, and I couldn't. I started saying, well, Dad, he said, no, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. And anybody who knew Mark Miles Sr. knew he didn't play. He was a direct man. But he was teaching me a lesson. He said, son, know your limitations. Don't use words you can't explain, and don't say anything you can't defend. Tony knew he was not a dancer. Sometimes, beloved, we make wrong choices. We make wrong choices. By the way, R. Kelly perhaps was looking into the carnival mirror in certain areas of his life. His road led to quick riches and fame. Perhaps R. Kelly was looking in the carnival mirror of love and relationships. None of us have perfectly smooth roads of life, don't get me wrong. But Tony road to a fulfilling life was not a fast track road. Oh yes, Tony had a singing career, but not at the age of 17 right after school, and not in the same arena. Tony had seen his fair share of carnival mirrors, but he kept on singing. He kept on writing songs. He worked with a different band, but Tony had a good support system. And here's where I'm about to close here today. He had a good support system. You need a good support system, beloved. He had another band working in the background on his behalf. His mother and his sister, and I know them well, two sweet, beautiful Christian women. All right. They filled out college applications for Tony and submitted them. He was given an academic scholarship. 4.5 years later, he graduated with a minor in music and a major in communication. Remember the name associated with Tony's definition of him? Musication. Musication. At 22 years old, he was still on the right road, and he remained faithful to that road for a while, but it was only because he had defined who he was, and he had determined who he was. Now, of course, we remember in the early part of the book and in the early part of our class, we remember that Tony was sidetracked a little while, same way I was, by money. Good money, raises, promotions, just like I was at Northern Trust Bank. I should have gone back to school. I should have gotten my education. But I was getting good raises and good money, good benefits, and good promotions. And I didn't look further down the road enough. Let that not be the end of your road. Let that not be your situation. You gotta define who you are. Then you must determine who you are. And we're gonna continue. We're not done with determination yet. But also what we discovered through this lesson today is that you need a good support system. You don't need people who will pat you on your back just to make you feel good all the way to your detriment. You don't need crabs in a bucket that's trying to hold you down because they don't want to see you go further. You don't need somebody that's afraid of change, so they want to keep you from changing because the change will affect them, and it's afraid, and it makes them afraid. That's not what you want. You want someone who understands who you are by definition, who understands what road of life you're trying to be on, and who truly want to see you progress in that life. Until next time, beloved, I commend you to God and the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among the sanctified. You got to have a determination if you're going to rise to the next level. Until next time, think on these things, take care of yourself, and share this with somebody that it might bless their life. God bless.